All right. Welcome to Ball Watching, yet another installment of your favorite St. Louis City SC podcast. I am Jake. If you're watching us virtually, you can see my name right there. And you've got Justin to whatever side Justin is on your screen. Welcome, everyone, to our first kind of virtual installment, fully virtual installment of this. And we'll also have this on podcasts on any platform that you listen to on Apple, Spotify. I know we're also, I think, on Amazon as well. But welcome again, everyone. We've got a pretty loaded agenda for you all today, and it's going to be a little bit different than what we normally do on the pod. Some pretty exciting stuff coming up. I'm sure you can guess what that is. But before we jump into some of that, wanted to cover. There's a lot of really unique and exciting milestones coming up for St. Louis City SC, and I'm sure you're all aware of some of those. But a lot of big chances coming up where we actually are going to start to fill out a lot of the rest of our team, adding some players. So first thing coming up for you all just to be aware of is that on the 7th, so today for you listening on release day, Monday, November 7th, the trade window is actually going to be open for a couple of days for teams to make some deals prior to what, Justin?
The MLS expansion draft.
Yes,
which is huge news for City coming up. And that's going to be a quick turnaround as well. That's November 10th will be the first day that the players will be eligible, that we can see what players that we can get. And then actually the next day on the 11th, you only have a day to really figure out who you want, but it will be 5 players that we can grab from. So there's going to be 5 rounds. And I mean, the rounds don't really matter since we're going to be the only expansion team, but we get to pick a player from each round. There's a selection clock. We'll get 3 minutes per selection, no timeouts, no trades. So it's going to fly on the 11th. You'll basically be watching for 15 minutes.
Yeah, no, it's like a draft where you're the only one on the clock. There's no one competing with you. And it's going to be a way that, we'll probably get 5. We talked about what kind of players come in these drafts. These, think about it if you watched or paid attention to like the last expansion draft, which I think was, in my mind, I know Charlotte was the last MLS expansion draft, but I think of the Blues a lot and how they were impacted by the Seattle Kraken coming into the NHL. And that was, scary because you put out a guy like Tarasenko unprotected to be selected, and jokes on them because they didn't pick him, and he would probably be their best player and would have been their best player for the last couple of years. So there's going to be some guys out there that are prime candidates and have a lot left to offer. There are going to be some young potential players that have a lot of raw kind of talent that just maybe hasn't been there to show yet. There might be some veterans out there who are looking to have a change of scenery. There's a lot of different profiles that we're going to see here. So it'll be super interesting to see who ends up with the team. And you best bet that Lutz, Bradley, the entirety of the staff at St. Louis City SC are doing their due diligence. November 10th is the day they release those lists, but they know who's going to be made available.
We've already got I'm pretty sure, a great idea of who we're going to want. And you might have one guy here or there that they didn't expect to be available or vice versa, but we're going to be coming ready on the 11th.
Yeah, and we'll be bringing that kind of coverage to you all, but that'll be really cool. I think it's being streamed live on MLSsoccer.com, so we'll be definitely tuning into that. And it's just going to be a hell of a month for soccer fans in general. After that, shortly after that, a couple days on the 16th, remember, free agency opens. Another chance for us to make additional signings, especially for those players that are coming down to the wire on their contracts, probably not going to renew or just can't seem to find an agreement with their current clubs. There are going to be plenty of free agents out there that we'll have some pickings over. And so we're all the other clubs. We have no reserve for having that first negotiation with just the free agency broad pool. But we will definitely be an attractive candidate, having not a full, filled out roster at this point. It's going to be exciting to see what we can negotiate there. And I'm sure some conversations have even begun. Like we pointed out Jared Stroud back a couple months ago. I believe he was a free agent as well, or becoming a free agent that we might have already had some contact with. I could be wrong there, but there'll be those types of players that are out there kind of waving their hand and saying, hey, take me. I can be a great contributor to the team, right off the bat for an expansion side. So free agency will continue. And there are some other kind of small, not small, but not as important for the more casual fans who aren't in the depths of all the MLS rules and regulations throughout November and December. The last thing I'm going to point you to is the Super Draft. And we pick first in the Super Draft, and then followed by the other teams, of course. But if you remember, how many players did SLU have in the round 1 last year of the Super Draft? I think it was.
We talked about this. I think there was 5 in the top 16 or so. Should definitely know that off the top of my head.
There's going to be some talent for sure, and maybe not as much SLU talent this year. But not to say that the team hasn't been putting up numbers on both the men's and women's side, but it's going to be another place for us to probably take what I would imagine would be maybe a lock starter. I mean, it could be if you're taking number 1 overall. I mean, I know the top SLU player, Keller, right? Keller was a staple already at Austin. I'm not sure if he maintained that spot throughout the entirety of the season, but he was a day 1 starter for Austin FC, and he was taken probably top 5 overall.
Yep. We had 2 guys top 5. But before all of that, Jake, and in between what we have with the expansion draft then the MLS Super Draft, what do we got?
We've got our first exhibition match at City Park, not Centene Stadium. We weren't able to talk about that all with you all. You know, a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes, I'm sure, on that transition. But I like the name more. I'll go with City Park over Centene Stadium for sure. I think it's also subject to change to whoever wins those stadium naming rights. But I do like City Park. I think that name will stay. It might just be like blah, blah, sponsor at City Park or City Park, blah, blah, blah. So that'll remain. But yeah, we have our first exhibition match against Bayern Leverkusen of the Bundesliga. Not having a great season, but have some solid, pretty big names. Don't know if they're all going to make it. Some of them might be representing their country or preparing for the World Cup. But still, it's an awesome way to get the campaign started at the stadium.
I mean, it's a typically, top 5 team in the Bundesliga when you look at Bayern Munich and you look at Dortmund, and if you throw them up towards the top, I mean, we haven't even played our first MLS game. So bringing these guys over to have them on November 16th, 7 p.m., filling City Park. Oh, yeah. It's going to be electric. I'm pumped.
It is. It's going to be electric. You know, I'm excited to see what the team is that we roll out that day. But I do also think it might be the sign of a beginning of a relationship between Bundesliga clubs and our club here. Obviously, Lutz has deep connections overseas, and especially in Germany. And I wouldn't be shocked to see these types of connections bubble up again. But yeah, I mean, Bayern Leverkusen is a perennial Champions League team of recently. Maybe not this year, but they have the talent to definitely give us some problems. And without a doubt, will be a very entertaining way to kind of kick off the first match in the new stadium. So hopefully you all secure your tickets. I think there are still some available as of today, but I'm sure it'll be close to sold out by the time we get there, and it's going to be electric.
Absolutely. And I think that kind of rounds us out a little bit for some city news and some new news that we're going to be switching over to.
We are. So you all know us as Ball Watching, a St. Louis City SC podcast, but you can see on our shirts, we also have some allegiance to our country and to our national team. So we all wanted to take this time to kind of tell you during the span from now until, the latter part of December, we're going to be breaking this bi-weekly or every other week release schedule and kind of taking a really enhanced focus on the U.S. men's national team and just the World Cup broadly. It is the coolest month of every 4 years. And we're going to provide you, we're going to be St. Louis's hub for the men's national team here and just the World Cup in general. Maybe not even just St. Louis. Anyone that wants to tune in obviously will find value there. But it's an awesome time. And like I said, we're going to be doing a lot more ad hoc releasing, like virtual here, maybe some interviews here and there. It's going to be different, and we're going to bring you a lot of engaging content to kind of be your source of all information, news, and fun stuff throughout the World Cup. I mean, Justin, what do you think about the World Cup? It's such a fun time.
It's by far my favorite time of the year, just like you said, for every 4 years that comes around. And we'll kind of give you guys a lot of the history, the timing, and kind of fill you in on the back end and all of that stuff. But also, like Jake said, we will not just be a U.S. men's national team podcast. We'll keep you updated on scores, updates, who's leading the race for the Golden Boot or the World Cup, where people are standing, and kind of how all the teams are doing across the world. So I am extremely excited.
Maybe even some picks, Justin. Maybe some locks.
We are doing some picks, Jake, and I'm not gonna. We never discussed these ahead of time, but that was my that was my question that I was gonna hit you with to start, Jake.
Okay.
So it's not a who'd you take as a lock, because that we'll probably get into once we get a little bit closer and we have some teams set. But do you know who the 3 favorites are to win the World Cup? Top 3 teams.
Okay. I think is Brazil number 1.
Brazil is number 1.
Yeah. Brazil number 1. How about, is France in the top 3?
France is in the top 3, but they fell out of the top 2 because of the Pogba news.
So Brazil, France, not Spain.
Nope.
Not England. I don't think England. Is England in there? No,
nope.
Not England.
They're number 4. I'll give you. Do you want a hint?
It's not Belgium, is it?
Do you want a hint? Nope. Their main player will more than likely be in the MLS next year.
Oh, Argentina?
Argentina.
Wow.
Number 2.
Yeah, I don't know if I buy that. I don't know if I buy Argentina. I feel like they should have 100% won a World Cup in Messi's tenure with them, and it's a shame. And I kind of pull for the man. I do hope he gets that as the resume closer outer for him before he gets to come here. But that's so cool that he's coming here as well. Hopefully you all saw that news. Not confirmed yet. I think knowing Inter Miami and David Beckham, I'm sure they'll be able to close that one out.
Yeah. I will say, I think they have one of the easier groups when you look at them: Saudi Arabia, Mexico, Poland.
Why.
So yeah. I think them obviously getting probably first pretty easily in that, and we'll get into the structure of the whole World Cup, so you guys we can fill you in on that as well. But and we'll talk about that. I know Jake was talking about locks. We'll do a little segment for the World Cup on picks and
make some money.
And we'll and we'll track how we do, Jake. I think I'll kick your butt
down. Yeah, a little transparency for the folks. I love it. So we are going to spend some time today just kind of talking you through. You've probably heard about the World Cup. You've probably watched a couple of games here and there, but it's probably the world's most iconic sporting event outside of the Olympics. Nothing quite brings the world together like the World Cup outside of the Olympics. And it's got some deep roots back in, I believe, 1930 was when the first one took place. And it was proposed by a man named Jules Rimet. And he wanted to create the World Cup to be and fill the void of soccer not being a part of the Olympics. It had not been part of the Summer Games up until that point. And when it was in the Olympics, the Olympics right now, they have soccer, so you have it in both places, but it's different, right? It's U23 players. I think every team gets 3 players that can be over the age of 23, but they have half the teams involved, half the matches. It just doesn't have the same weight as the World Cup. So the World Cup is the premier soccer event in the world every 4 years. A little bit different this year. Obviously, it's usually a summer thing, but we'll get into some of that. But FIFA is the actual governing body over the World Cup. Say what you want about FIFA. I'm sure we can get a whole episode into some of the scandals and corruption that swirl around this governing body. But they've put on this event since 1930. I think there's only been 2 times where it wasn't held, and that was because of World War II. The current champs are France, and they won in Russia in 2018. Hopefully a lot of you watched that. In total, this is kind of crazy to think about. I don't know how many countries there are in the world. I probably should know that, but only 79 national teams have competed in a World Cup period. And the trophy, number 1, has only been won by 8 national teams. Justin, who's number 1 most trophies?
Brazil. And they were also the only team that have played in every World Cup as well, outside of the 2, obviously, from World War II around that time period, followed by Germany and Italy. Each have 4. Argentina, France, and Uruguay each have 2. And then England and Spain each with 1.
Yeah. And there was and we'll get to this in the U.S. thing, but we say the 1930 was the first World Cup, and the U.S. was in the first World Cup. The U.S. participated. It was our highest ever finish. So we'll get to that, but kind of a little fun fact for you all. As we're kind of talking about just how big the World Cup is, it's the singular most widely viewed sporting event in the world. I think I've seen projections for this year to be over half the population or just under half the population to tune in and watch the World Cup. That's freaking insane to think about. Like nothing comes anywhere close to that viewership. I think the cumulative viewership, we have a stat here from the 06 World Cup. So this is a couple World Cups ago, was 26.3 billion, with an estimated 700 million just tuning into the final match. Even that's insane. I mean, it's incredible how many people tune in to watch it. I know when we used to intern at a company, and they had TVs there, and World Cup was on all day, every day, all the group games. You never missed a beat. It's insane. It's such a fun time.
It's when you're kind of putting those numbers in perspective, there's around 8 billion people in the world today. So when you're looking back at 2006 and you have 26 billion people or viewers in total that were able to watch those games, it's pretty absurd. And now when you think about where technology is and streaming services and how soccer has grown even more in the US, that number is going to be outrageous.
Were you Googling the population over there?
Yeah.
You loser.
I don't know. I was also going to Google how many countries are in the world. I want to say 150 something.
I thought it was in the two. I thought it was in the twos. I don't know though. Google that and let us know.
Yeah, I'll keep you updated.
There's a lot. There's not as many teams that compete in the World Cup. Right now, we're at 32, and that number is going to change when we host the World Cup as a country in 2026. So 32 teams. There's 8 groups of 4 teams, and they're labeled alphabetically, so A, B, C, D, all the way through H. And there's different types of how they do the seedings. The host nation is always in the top ranked kind of group of teams, because the host nation wants to be rewarded for putting this on, so they get to cement their place with your Brazils, your Argentinas. So they kind of get to avoid them and some of how the pots all draw out and how the teams get drawn into each group. But all you really need to know is that for the U.S. and for your team, whoever your team is, to advance, you need to be in the top 2. You play round robin style. Every team plays each other in the 4-team group. So each team is guaranteed 3 games. So you need to be able to put up points, 3 points for a win, 1 for a draw, and 0 for a loss. And basically if there is a tiebreaker, they have a couple different rules. They have like 17 different rules in case these things keep tying. But really, what's most important is goal differential. So meaning how many you scored for versus how many you led against. You want to be as positive as you possibly can there to make sure that you have that tiebreaker locked down. So,
and I feel like that's extremely important on some things that people need to remember as they're watching these games. You can't really feel bad for some of these games that get extremely out of hand, because you can't lay your foot off the gas, because if you do and you lose by that tiebreaker and you have to wait another 4 years for this to happen. So when you see some of these games, you'll see some blowouts. I promise you'll see some 5-0, 6-0, 7-2 games, but that's really because you can't take a chance of not doing that, because say that's the only game you win, you really need to lay it on them.
Right. No, you do. Like, you got to put the foot on the throat and press, because someone will do it to you. If you're not doing it to someone, you will have it done to you. And I hope we're not on the receiving end of one of those. But it does happen. It does happen to teams. You feel bad for them. You just hope you're not going to be that person. But so when you think about, like I said, the top 2 advance. So the winner of your group goes on to play the second place team from a different group. And then your second place team goes on to play the winner of a different group. So you do want to really take down that top spot, because chances are you're going on to play. If you take the second spot, you're probably going to play a pretty strong team. There's strong teams in every group, and there's multiple strong teams in every group. But you want to take number 1, because that just gets you out of the sights of your Frances, your Brazils, the perennial contenders that'll just knock you senseless. So really important that you want to be in the top 2, but ideally got to squeeze to get number 1 to have really a good shot to advance out of the round of 16.
And Jake already touching on all of the different groups and the teams. I think one of the most exciting things is when you really look at how expansive that can be. That's 64 total soccer games, pretty much within a 5-week span, which is just absolutely absurd. So we'll get into like the timing of when all of those are occurring and everything, but not only is there 64 of them, but for everybody else that doesn't follow soccer that closely, 90 minutes for each of those. And then just for also adding some more into that, there's always added time just for injuries, yellow cards, red cards, things like that. If the game is still tied when it's not in the group play, if it's the group play, you can end in a tie and get that 1 point. But when it's in the knockout stages, like Jake said, when you advance and you play the one team and the winner goes on, you will have 2 15-minute halftimes, just for a winner take all in that sense. And they call that just pretty much a regular
Extra
overtime, time.
Yep.
But then if you're still tied after that, you go to penalty kicks, which we talked on, just doing kicks from the spot, which is not a way you want to go out and have to wait another 4 years.
No, you don't. And the layout of the team structure is a little bit different this year too, because the World Cup's coming this late, and we'll talk a little bit about that. But because it's coming this late, it's significantly disrupting all of like the European leagues. So they're all hitting pause on their leagues, whereas the MLS is kind of just ending perfectly right before it. So for all these players that are playing abroad right now, they kind of got to hit reset and go really focus on the national team and then come back to their clubs and play. So because of that and the disruption, they're allowing each team to carry 26 players to the World Cup versus the usual 23-man squad. And that's just because they're trying to squeeze this in to the holiday kind of festive fixture, which is usually a really hectic time for all the European clubs. And it's going to be after Christmas. They're just going to go balls to the wall and play as many games as they can in the next couple of months. But kind of just something important to note. And for us as Americans, obviously Qatar is the host nation for this year. And there's a lot of nuances that we'll get to with Qatar, but we're going to have a pretty good time when it comes to where and when we get to watch these games. I believe Qatar is an 8-hour time difference. I could be wrong there, but all of the games in the group stage for us are going to be at 4 a.m., 7 a.m., 10 a.m., and 1 p.m. Central Time. And some of you are like, well, 4 a.m. sucks. But I'm like, yeah, but it could be midnight, and it could be 3 a.m. after that, 6 a.m. So frankly, I'm not bummed about that. I think every single U.S. game in the group is at 1 p.m. Central Time. So it's prime time for the Americans abroad, and definitely going to be able to catch all those games. No excuses.
Yeah, and our first game will be on the 21st of November, and then moving through you'll have your knockout stage of about a week and a half or so with those games. Round of 16 will be the first week of December, all the way through the final being on December 18th. So, like we said, that'll put you almost
Merry
at
Christmas.
probably 4 weeks or so. Yeah, I know.
Took me a nice little gift. Hopefully, the U.S. makes it even sweeter.
And like Jake said, I know it's like these times could be worse, but at least like we talked about earlier, the streaming services, you will have a way to watch these games, no doubt. You can watch them on TV in English on Fox, TV in Spanish on Telemundo or NBC Universo. You can also stream the games live in Spanish on Peacock. So I think there's going to be multiple options. I know it's not always ideal to have streaming services, but having them on Fox, and you'll be able to watch all the U.S. games, that's for sure.
And the winner does truly take all here. It's a prestigious tournament. Unfortunately, the winner does not take all in terms of the trophy. The trophy is legitimate 18-karat gold. It weighs 13 plus pounds, and they get to hoist it at the end. And it's a beautiful, beautiful trophy. It's like not huge, but it's just really nice looking, and it is gold. Obviously, FIFA owns that and does not give that to the winner. They don't just pump out 13-pound 18-karat gold trophies for every World Cup. They give you a replica to take home to your country. But it's a pretty cool trophy. If you haven't seen it, definitely look it up. And the last thing that we'll kind of mention in terms of like other kind of random tidbits is that I mentioned the 26th World Cup is going to be hosted here. It's also being co-hosted by Canada and Mexico, though United States will host, I think, the bulk of all. I think every game after the quarterfinals will be in the States. And it's going to be the first tournament with an expanded roster of 48 teams playing a total of 80 matches. So if you think this is cool, tune in 4 years. It's going to be even cooler, and it's going to be here in the States. That is going to be a sight to see. It'll be the most profitable tournament ever hosted, probably for the World Cup, maybe ever for any sporting event. That is going to be soccer on a pedestal in the States and another launch ground for us to take the sport to a whole nother level here.
And you can look up the cities that they have. I don't remember them all off the top of my head, but I know for a fact that Kansas City is one, which is only a quick 4-hour, 3.5-hour drive for me and Jake. So Mike Stromberg, we're coming for you. So please make room. I would like to have a nice free spot to stay, because that is going to be an expensive time. But yes, look forward to it. Before we get into all of that, though, Jake, I think some people probably need to know a little bit more about Qatar. Are you I'm a Qatar guy. Are you a Qatar guy?
So I've been corrected on it. I was always Qatar, and I think I was Qatar because, do you remember ever seeing Transformers, like the original Transformers with like Shia LaBeouf? Okay, I'm pretty sure one of the first scenes, it was in Qatar, and then someone told me after a while, like, no, it's Qatar, like cutting Qatar. And I'm like, that doesn't sound right. I went with that for a while, and then I'm hearing this all kind of come back, and we're like, oh, Qatar. I'm like, who told me it was Qatar? Because I had it right the first time. So wait, what are you saying?
I'm pretty sure it is Qatar. I don't think it's Qatar.
All right. Well, we are a pronunciation friendly podcast for however you want to pronounce
it. And I usually let Jake take those, but this one's short enough. I think I can handle myself. But just kind of getting into those, I think one of the coolest things about them, it's going to be a beautiful place right at the Persian Gulf with a lot of different landscapes and different areas for people to walk around and see. And God knows that they built some great stadiums that are going to be there. But I personally think the coolest thing about this is their size. 55 kilometers or 35 square miles that they're going to put all of these games in. So basically, when you think about that, you can just basically you can stay in the middle of it and take a quick Uber ride or whatever the transportation is going to be over there to all of these games, which is completely absurd when you think about that compared to when it comes to the US, and we have games in New York and we have games in Los Angeles, which are over 2,000 miles away. So I think it being that compact is going to be absolutely awesome, and I wish I was going to be able to be there.
We do have potentially some boots on the ground, Justin. We have some former interview guests of ours are going to be over there to take it all in. So we might be able to get a little of a boots on the ground perspective from some of those folks while they are there. So we would love to bring that to you all. But hell yeah, it's so much better than like going to Brazil, or even when we come here to the States. I mean, you have a game in New York, you might have a game in California, and that travel time sucks. But here, yeah, it's like a long Uber basically at the most for every single game, which is a luxury for all these players. I mean, you don't get jet lags. Like you definitely are going to benefit from that. And I hope the product's even better because of that. But Qatar is a heck of a place. I'm sure we'll get a lot more of a view into it when the games actually do start. Obviously, it's a very hot place as well. That's why we're here in the first place, doing this in November, December, because it would be unbearable out there had it not been during this time. I think they're projecting it to be 70s, 80s Fahrenheit during this time. And the stadiums, the fields, it's going to be state-of-the-art, air-conditioned, pumping, up from the field all throughout the concourse in these stadiums. I don't think it won't be as hot and sweaty as like you saw the players in Brazil. If you watched that, like I feel like you stepped out onto that field and like your jersey was just like glued to your body. It was insane. Like you got to have a pool. I think it'll be a little bit different, but they've got some state-of-the-art stuff on show to make sure that these go off without a hitch.
Yeah, and I think there's going to be a lot of other things that the Qatar is going to do. Qatar is going to do extremely well, and they already have their mascot for 2022, or coming up in literally 2 weeks.
Yeah,
Laib. This is an Arabic term for a super skilled player, and he will bring a youthful spirit of what they say, spreading joy and confidence wherever he travels.
You love the marketing.
It's hard. I had to Google what he looks like. It looks cute. He's a cute little dude.
You'll see him flying around.
They always have cool mascots at these things, but I like this one a lot.
Yeah. No, it'll be cool. It'll be a nice little mascot for the games. And the last kind of stuff that we want to cover in terms of like background on Qatar is tickets. They've already sold over 95% of the tickets. These stadiums will be full. US is, I think, top of the list with Qatar in terms of attendance and buying those tickets. We always show out. I think we're usually top 1, top 2, maybe top 3 in terms of citizens that buy these tickets for every single World Cup, which is funny because we have so many different sports here, yet Americans are always the highest to show out. And their population might have a little bit to do with that. But alcohol for our drinkers out there, the big ones, the little ones, the occasional ones, there is no drinking in Qatar, period. But the World Cup's a little bit different. And we've got some big boy sponsors like AB coming in there saying, we're going to change things up a little bit for this time. And I do believe that there will be alcohol both on premise for the stadiums and in certain like designated areas outside the stadiums, just not really in the streets as much in society. I think they're going to try to do their best to contain that, to not have that influence spread onto their culture and their people. They're going to have drunk tanks and zones to make sure everyone's sobering up before they go back into the real world. It's going to be really interesting.
Jake, there are some other rules, and I think people just need to look up some of these other ones. But I would say anybody that's going should be careful, not in making sure that you're not acting a fool when you're over in Qatar. But there are some other things that I would just say, give it a Google, and it's going to be a very interesting time. So everybody be safe. Yes. And kind of to also bring this all kind of together. Qatar will be playing the first game. It'll be on November 20th against Ecuador at 11 a.m. So that is the kickoff. I would assume. I mean, it's been a while since we all saw the World Cup, but there's definitely going to be like some opening ceremony things and everything like that. So I would definitely tune into that first game on November 20th.
Absolutely. And to that end, we talk a little bit now, and as we pivot to a little bit of a focus on the U.S. men's national team. But why I want to correct myself before we do so, that they're projecting this event to actually have over 5 billion unique followers or watchers during this time, which is, I mean, Justin Googled the population. That's over half the population. That's a load of people, and we're going to be 2 of them. And I hope you all make up a bunch of them as well, but it's going to be insane. And even more insane because for us now, as we get into this U.S. men's national team kind of spotlight, there's a little bit of optimism heading into this. And I say a little bit. I think maybe had some things gone differently, there might have been more. And I think we're on a good trajectory right now. But I'm really excited to see what this team does in this World Cup.
I couldn't agree more, Jake, to be honest. I'm interested. I'm excited and a little nervous just of the way that we've been kind of not limping in, but not looking great in our 2 friendly games. We've got a couple injuries, but the most exciting part is the youth that we have in the team. It'll be the youngest U.S. men's national team, more than likely, coming in. I know we're still working through and kind of finalizing that roster, but we'll kind of get into some of the storylines and some of the individual players there. But a little bit of background on the U.S. as well is that this will be our 11th appearance, 33 games, 8, 6, and 19 over there, over that span. Not incredible, not awful, but it's got to be better this year, in my opinion. Some of the highlights that we would like to touch on is that we did place in 3rd in the first ever World Cup, which is kind of insane. I know, but that's been now
almost 100 years.
90 years. Yeah, exactly. So we're looking to do a little bit better after that span. In 1950, one of the highlights was that we did upset England and 1-0 in the group play. We made the quarterfinals in 2002, and we've had 3 round 16 finishes, which includes the most recent appearance in 2014. But Jake, wasn't there a World Cup in between 2014 and 2022?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. Did that one get canceled? Was it a COVID thing or something? And
right before, but it didn't.
Yeah. So some of the lowlights, especially recently for the U.S. men's national team, was failing to qualify in 2018. Disastrous. A big step back for what I would have said was still a growing program at the time. But I do think, seeing hopefully what we do in terms of success at this World Cup and then again in 26, and if we can continue to build and learn from our mistakes, especially there, I think it could be a blessing in disguise looking back on it. You couldn't have told me that back then. I was devastated, but yeah, 2018 did not qualify on the last day of qualifications. We kind of limped into qualifying on this one as well. CONCACAF always proves to be a little more difficult than we think it's going to be, despite the talent that we have. But 2018 sounded bad. We missed 9 straight World Cups from 1954 to 1986. So you think you have it bad. Try being some of those folks that liked soccer back then. I don't know if, 9 straight World Cups.
36 years. That. I don't know, but I would be close to retiring at that point, and I would never have another U.S. game.
Who's the who's the most appearances in the World Cup for a U.S. national team player, Justin?
I don't know if it's too easy to say, but I want to say Landon Donovan.
Yeah,
but that's okay.
Sometimes it is just the easy answer. Yeah, Landon has I think 12 appearances, and he's followed closely by Kobe Jones, DeMarcus Beasley. Two big names you think about, and our special guest interview that we would be providing as we get a little bit closer to the World Cup. So we'll let you guess. If someone wants to go perusing the record books for most World Cup appearances, you'll find our guest is tied for second
with 11 matches in the World Cup, which is pretty insane. And quick fact that we learned about him and talked with him about, he was also a captain.
Yeah, also
of the U.S. national team. So
legend. And the only other stuff we'll tell you player wise, I'm sure you all know, but Donovan was probably the most famous U.S. men's national team player. Tim Howard probably made a case as well, and I'd say all that before Christian Pulisic came onto the scene, and he's kind of just captured this global type stardom. He lives up to it sometimes he doesn't. But most goals in a World Cup still with Landon Donovan. Most saves in a World Cup game. The Secretary of Defense, Tim Howard. Holy crap, that Belgium performance back in 2014 was life-changing.
If you guys, when you guys are watching this, keep this stat in your head. He had 15 saves
in one game.
In a game. That means, and it's not just you'll see stats of like how many, like Brazil have like 20 shots during a game. No, these were 15 shots on goal and saves. I would just keep that in your head. It's something
some phenomenal ones.
Yes,
some great ones.
Insane. Yes.
Belgium was and is still a powerhouse. I wonder how they'll fare this year. It's probably a lot of still the same names that are just towards the end of their careers. But those are some of the history when you kind of think about some of the U.S. Kind of how we've showed out in terms of the World Cup over the years. But we've got some good storylines coming into this one. Some more positive, some more negative. But get us kicked off, Justin. What's on your mind as we head into this?
I mean, the first one to transition off of the Tim Howard saves is, who do you think is going to be our starting keeper, Jake? Do you think you're going to go with Zach Steffen or Turner?
I like this. Hold on, I'm putting up a little banner for us. But yes, we've got quite the debate on our hands. We did ask TK on the interview about this, and we're going to release that part of this as well, and you can get his take on this. But Zach Steffen plays in the championship right now in England, and he used to be with Man City. I believe he's actually on loan right now, so still technically with Man City. And then Matt Turner is now at Arsenal, only really playing cup matches, not really playing any matches in the Premier League. I'm torn on this one. Neither of them have blown my socks off, and usually goalies are a strong suit for the U.S. Tim Howard was the perfect example of that. You always knew he was going to be a rock star. And we've kind of gotten away from that. I do say, though, in terms of my opinion is that I think Steffen will start. But if I was in Greg Berhalter, the coach's shoes for the U.S. men's national team, I would feel a lot of pressure. I honestly think I would actually go with Matt Turner, in my opinion.
I would go with Matt Turner as well. I do see us trying to build out of the back a lot, which that's when I would take Steffen. But the World Cup is too big of a stage, and I think Steffen has had a couple of blunders to where you cannot let one slip through your legs or right past your hands. And that's where I feel better with the shot stopper of Matt Turner. And let's change our game a little bit. We haven't been playing well out of the back anyway, so let's just kind of nix that and move the ball forward and don't have to go through our goalie. So I would take Matt Turner solely for being a better shot stopper, in my opinion.
Yep, he's a solid shot stopper, and he's getting better with his feet. For those that don't think he needs to work on it, I think there was definitely some improvement compared to what Steffen was able to do, but I think he's starting to work on that. At Arsenal, they definitely play a lot more with having the ball at the keeper's feet. But that's not the only kind of storyline we have going into this one. Another one is legitimately, I'm not sure what to do about Christian Pulisic. He's our captain most of the time. I don't know if he'll be the captain in the World Cup. I don't think he's necessarily a captain material. I think he's just a very veteran when you think about the U.S. men's national team right now. He's not playing often at Chelsea. He's played a little bit more since they switched coaches. He's not really remarkably in form at this point as of this recording, but I still think lights out, one of the most dynamic players we have, and definitely at his best can be one of the most dynamic players in the world. I mean, he's got some amazing talent, but you just worry, is his confidence there? This is the world's biggest stage for the game. I don't know what to say or what to think about what he's going to bring to the team yet.
I disagree. I will definitely start him, and I'd probably start him on the left. I agree with you in the sense that I don't know if he would be our captain. Will probably be Tyler Adams.
Yep.
But I would say you definitely got to put him in there. I know he doesn't have a whole lot of, he has a ton of national team experience, and I think that's where he's going to carry these guys and be able to kind of hopefully calm down some of these younger guys. And I think you need to start him and just bring him in there, even when he's got a little bit down. Some of these teams that we're going to be playing are not going to have very good backs, to be completely honest. And I think, yes, he's not doing well at Chelsea playing as some of the top defenders in the world, but I think he brings too much to the table when it comes to looking at his offensive presence, and then also hopefully being able to calm down or pick up some of these younger guys.
I agree. I think I would still start him as well. I just really worry about like his mental. Maybe this is what he needs. Like the World Cup, by the way, is also the biggest like proving ground as well for people that are looking to make a move or to show people that they were wrong about them or show their club that they belong or they need to go somewhere else. This is a huge time where everyone's watching you. If he wants to go get away from Chelsea or he wants to go to Graham Potter, their coach at Chelsea, and say, why the hell am I not playing? I'm showing out for my country on the world's biggest stage, and I can't find a spot in your starting 11. And Chelsea's not even doing that well this season compared to what they should be doing. He has a lot to prove. So I hope he comes in with a chip on his shoulder and just ready to prove what he would have been, hopefully, back in 2018 when they would have, had they not missed the World Cup.
Yeah, and I think that kind of transitioned into one of my next topics, Jake, it's hard for us to be the guys trying to say that we're like making these decisions or what we would say, but also Greg Berhalter. I think it's been kind of topsy-turvy. I think there's definitely some pros and cons that we've seen along the way, but it's ultimately going to be his decision on what we do with this team. And I don't know, I think we kind of struggled throughout CONCACAF and World Cup qualifying. So I am optimistic, but very hesitant in that sense. And maybe that's, I feel very good about the team, and I know it's a lot about the players on the field, but there's also a lot in the mastermind behind the coach. What are your thoughts?
He does a lot of thinking for sure. And you can tell that he does a lot of things right, I'm sure, in preparation, and he has a good amount of tactics on display. I do worry. That's why I put Ugg in there. I just feel like he's frustrating sometimes. We have such good talent on the team, and it just doesn't show at times. And you think that some of these players are maybe trying to be a player that they're not, trying to fit a style that they're not suited to, when maybe we should just let him play a little bit more. He does definitely want to bring a certain style. I wonder if he'll, seeing how it didn't really fare well in these last couple friendlies and even in CONCACAF's qualifying, I wonder if he'll be giving a little more freedom to some of these players. It'd be a weird time to try something new in the World Cup, but anything goes. A win's a win here. You got to do what gets results. So I'll be very interested to see some of his selections. And the very first criticism that you'll be able to levy on him is whatever happens with the roster reveal, which I believe is on November 9th. And that'll be the first time that you'll see where his head's at. And that's not the full roster, by the way. That'll be a preliminary roster. It'll be broken down a little bit as the days go on. But that'll be my first time to see where his head's at in terms of personnel, because he's got some big options, big options to make. And that's a good problem to have sometimes. Other times when no one's really grabbing that spot in the roster, you're like, I don't know who to give it to because no one's telling me, hey, coach, I'm the guy for this thing. So we have a couple debates on the U.S. roster side.
Yeah, I would say, and the number one obviously is who's going to be our center forward, and kind of talking through on that. And you have a couple options, but like you said, no one's really grabbing at it. I personally would I'd put Pulisic on the left, Timothy Weah on the right. St. Louis guy, I would love to see Josh Sargent at least make the team. But then you have some other options as starters as well. If you don't put Josh up top with Jesus Ferreira, Jordan Pefok, Haji Wright, Ricardo Pepi. So it's not awful options, but not exactly great either. No one really showed me enough, at least in the World Cup qualifying, to be like, yep, I feel comfortable with our guy up top.
Yeah. And we'll get into these players a lot more. I think what we're planning on doing, Justin, is kind of doing like a primer and a post game, or maybe even combining those two as we start group play. And like I said, we're going to not be releasing these bi-weekly. We'll be doing more ad hoc and closer to these games. But we have a pretty tough group as well. And in fact, usually what people always want to talk about in the group in World Cup drawings is who got the group of death. Who's the group of death? People that don't know the group of death, it's exactly what it sounds like. It's the group where it's going to be the hardest to get out of it, and it has the highest strength and caliber of teams. Unfortunately, it's not really one where traditionally you would think of we are in the group of death, but we are technically in the group of death for this iteration of the World Cup. And when I say that, usually if you have like a Germany, Spain, Italy in a group, that's obviously the group of death. But for us, when you think about world rankings, The Athletic had put out an article about quantifying each of the group rankings and stacking them up against each other to determine what the average group ranking was with all the teams on an aggregate. And the US's group has an aggregate FIFA ranking of 14.75. England's number 5. Iran's 21, which is high for Iran. USA is 15 and Wales is 18. So basically, you have 4 teams playing each other in a round-robin style that are almost all in the top 20, according to FIFA. And people are like say, "Oh, well, FIFA doesn't really know the rankings and they're kind of biased and blah blah blah." Sure, but this is no walk in the park for this team. People that see Iran like, "Oh, we'll walk all over Iran." I'm sorry, but it's not. Nothing will be a walk in the park for us. And if it is, I will do something. We could think about what that would be, but if we beat a team by more than 3, I would cry. Maybe 2 even.
I mean, we've done 2 friendlies recently and we haven't scored a goal.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'd be happy if we win by 2. I mean, I'll also just be happy that we win games. But I will say, Jake, I've said this before and I will continue to say this over the next couple of weeks.
All right.
Hammering the U.S. to get out of the group at even money. Whatever you want to put on it, you get the same amount of money back. I don't know why you wouldn't do it if you're going to be into this World Cup. This is the youngest team we've ever had, probably one of the best teams we've ever had. This group of death, I still don't feel that bad about. I mean, I think we can take it to England. We'll step up for that game on Black Friday. That'll be the biggest game of the year by far. Wales and Iran, sure, I don't care. Fine. We're going to get out of the group. And now the question is, Jake, are we going to win the group?
I think it is there to be won. I don't think England's invincible. I'm not sold on England. I think they have the most luxury when it comes to a roster, maybe outside of France. But I don't think they have the philosophy or the camaraderie. They're missing something. They haven't convinced me. And I would be stoked if I was their coach because you have so much depth at every position. Like we would kill for our US team to probably be like their B team. Their B team would beat a lot of good teams. It's just a matter of putting it all together, which is a whole other problem in itself, and which is, I think, some of what we're encountering at the US. But I still do think England wins, and I think we still do take second. But I do not think that we should overlook any games. I do like how our games are set up personally. We kick off our first match on November 21st. It's a Monday at 1 p.m. against Wales. And that to me is the big swing game. I think of all the matches you look at, Wales probably think they have just as good a shot as us to qualify and get out of the group. They're not going to be taking us lightly. We're not going to be taking them lightly, but they definitely think they're better than us. And they probably are happy with their positioning in this group. But that's a huge game. I think that is a minimum. You need to take at least a point out of that game and get at least a draw. Because if you don't, you're going to Black Friday, November 25th at England. Not at England. Obviously, there's no really home and away for these cases. But you're playing probably the biggest game of your lives for all these players. And for our country in the last couple of years, with a lot at stake. And I don't have the highest of expectations for that. I would love just to go there and play with England and give them a serious problem that we're not just like your little cousin at the party that's trying to tell you that they can beat you at this. Like, I want to show them that we're not just a show, that we're here to play.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I know I got excited when I was talking about it. I'm a little scared of England's attack. In the way that our defense has looked as well. So I would completely agree with you. We have to get a point out of the Wales game. You can't be going into Black Friday and possibly coming out with both of those games with 0 points and then having to go to Iran. And if somehow Wales beat us and pulls out a win against England, then we're pretty much done before we even get to our third game. So we have to have a point on Monday. I think then it'll get the boys really amped up if we take home a dub and we can go into England and actually be able to breathe a little bit and play the normal game that we would like to play. So you don't want to be with your back against the wall going into that Black Friday game, regardless of how big it will be for the guys. And then, like Jake said, we'll finish out with Iran on Tuesday. And I think I know you were talking about how that you can't take them for granted, but I think that has to be an absolute dub. I think
100%.
When you're looking at the U.S. men's national team and talking about them and our history, and you can bring up all of that, but this is a very young squad, but probably still one of our best squads. And I think you cannot lose to Iran in the World Cup.
No, you need to take every game seriously. The only situation I could see us not needing a win there is if we win both games before, and we probably would rotate the squad a little bit, but that's not going to be a problem because I don't think it's going to happen. Things are always interesting for us. I want to take a little bit of time. I know we're running a little bit long on this, but Black Friday, US versus England, it is going to be a spectacle, regardless of whether it's a game or not. And I really just hope it is a game. It's going to be some place that if you're a soccer fan, if you're not a soccer fan, you'll remember where you were that day because, everyone's kind of shut down. It's Black Friday. It's the World Cup, and it's US versus England. The soccer gods have got to be involved in this one. Maybe FIFA's probably behind the curtains on scheduling this when it was. But, I mean, could it get any better? No one's doing anything that day. We're all full from Thanksgiving, and we've got our country taking on our former owner of our country in the sport that they consider themselves dominant. And we don't. So it's going to be such a fun time. And I hope that game could be the biggest, most watched soccer game in American history. That is my hot take of the day. That could be.
Oh, I would say absolutely. I think we've made it further in the World Cup before, but I think this, like you said, no one's going to be working. It's at 1 p.m. It's not like we're going to be still hungover from Turkey at 4 a.m. after having a massive Thanksgiving. I think everybody's going to be, I would say, if you don't have plans now, start making them, because I think every city in the U.S. is going to be packed trying to find a TV and a great spot to watch.
Yeah, it's going to be. So yeah, make plans now. So, I mean, basically when we hit November 21st, we play on a Monday. We play 4 days later on Friday against England. We play 4 days later again at Iran on Tuesday. So 21st, 25th, 29th, everything after that, it pretty much hit reset. Group play is kind of its own tournament. And then you get to the knockout round in the round of 16 where you play. And if you win, you go on. If you lose, you go home. So it's going to be such a fun month. And we've just entered November. We're absolutely stoked here, and you're going to hopefully you all look at us. We're going to be the hub for all this news, all this content, hottest takes, the locks of the day, the hammer, as Justin would call it. So we're going to have all this stuff coming your way. We're going to have boots in the ground, videos, interviews. It's going to be electric, and we're looking to build a lot of soccer fans in this time. So hopefully you're all along for the ride.
Yeah, couldn't be more excited. Get your gear while you can too, while you only, still got 3 weeks.
Absolutely. Load up. Again, we are on Twitter and Instagram at BallWatchingSTL. My name is Jake, and this is Justin, and we're going to be your hosts on this magnificent journey from November 20th, the first day, all the way through the entire World Cup. So tune in with us and watch with us. The World Cup is about to be lit.
Stay tuned. We'll hear from you guys much sooner than usual.
Sounds good.